Afghan withdrawal leaves allies to face harsh reality of US's departure from world stage. While President Joe Biden's withdrawal of troops by August 31st is inevitable, the speed at which the situation descended into chaos, and the White House's lack of contrition and flexibility has left allies spinning. On Tuesday, Biden's fellow G7 leaders, led by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, pressed the U.S. president to extend that deadline in order to get foreign citizens, Afghan people who have aided allied troops and other vulnerable groups out of the country. But Biden stood firm. The reason this is so hard for allies to swallow is because so much of the world's foreign policy, especially in Europe, is based on the assumption that the U.S.'s commitments to the values-based Western order, through the UN and NATO, are ironclad. NATO's treaty opens with the pledge that the parties to this treaty reaffirm their faith in the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations and their desire to live in peace with all peoples and all governments. The UN Charter it references reads, "The purposes of the United Nations are to maintain international peace and security, and to that end, to take effective collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats to the peace." Speaking on Tuesday about his meeting with the G7, Biden told press, "We talked about our mutual obligation to support refugees and evacuees currently fleeing Afghanistan. The United States will be a leader in these efforts and will look to the international community and to our partners to do the same. All of us agree that we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with our closest partners to meet the current challenges we face in Afghanistan, just as we have for the past 20 years," he also said. But many have doubts about what that means in practice. "To me, this shows as the end of one geopolitical era, which was about creating a liberal international order, and the beginning of a new one, which is about the competition between China and America," said Mark Leonard, director of the European Council on Foreign Relations, earlier on Tuesday.
America's exit from a key strategic area has also created opportunities for its international enemies to increase their influence in Afghanistan on very different terms to those required from the West. What made support from the West so attractive to countries around the world was the underpinned commitment to helping countries build liberal, open democracies and a society grounded in the rule of law, says David Lidington, chair of the Royal United Services Institute and a former Deputy Prime Minister of the UK. One of the consequences of the defeat in Afghanistan is the lack of confidence in the West, which can only be a good thing for China and Russia, who can offer their support with zero regard for rule of law or human rights, he adds. China's new relationship with the Taliban was already in the works back in July, before the militant group took control of the country. China's Foreign Minister, Wang Yi, met a Taliban delegation in northern China, where the two sides reached an agreement. China would help with Afghanistan's reconstruction, and in exchange the Taliban would ensure regional stability. This is the same Russia that supported stability in Syria by providing its brutal president, Bashar al-Assad, with firepower and aiding in airstrikes against rebel groups. Russia has denied this, saying it was exclusively targeting ISIS. It is also the same Russia in which opponents of the Kremlin are poisoned and imprisoned. China and Russia have in recent years acted in tandem, using international institutions to poke the West in the eye. According to Valina Charkarova, director of the Austrian Institute for European and Security Policy, China and Russia are already operating within the existing global order with the clear goal of disrupting it, dismantling its multilateral structures to further competing views of multilateralism that contradict the West's. Coordinated efforts by China and Russia in the UN Security Council and other international organizations will continue to grow as both states seek to improve their international image as norm setters in a rapidly changing rules-based world order, she adds.
The withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, and the subsequent race to evacuate vulnerable people, fits into this narrative. Rightly or wrongly, the US's commitment to withdraw by such a hard deadline will be seen as the catalyst for the Taliban taking control of the country. How it handles the consequences of that will likely color how both its allies and its enemies view the US's legacy in Afghanistan. Leslie Vinjamuri, director of the US and the Americas program at Chatham House, says people will judge the US in Afghanistan based on how it manages the unfolding humanitarian situation, whether it takes large numbers of immigrants, what kind of humanitarian assistance it commits to. She adds that if Afghanistan descends into a failed state or a grave humanitarian crisis unfolds, many people will blame the US, rightly or wrongly. And undoubtedly this will feed into the narrative of US hypocrisy when it comes to human rights. The fight for Afghanistan may be over, but some believe there is still work for the West to do. We can invest in the UN and start and use its programs to support the Afghan people, Tujandhat said. We can bring in regional partners in India, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and others to work together. The Taliban isn't universally popular, but it is inspiring others. Islamist groups in Africa and in Asia are drawing inspiration, and we need to work with partners around the world. We need to start acting internationally. The reputational cost to the West of what's happening in Afghanistan won't be fully known for some time. What is clear for now is that if America's allies want the option to serve their own interests globally, they need to accept that as things stand, they are inadequate. That means countries that have for so long relied on the stability of the US commitment to promoting Western values will need to rethink their foreign policy. If Mark Leonard is correct, and this really is the end of a geopolitical era, those countries will need to refocus their priorities on a new, scary basis, that the US simply isn't that interested anymore.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.